Hey, welcome back to the Build It Basement. I'm Kerm, and I am building a Trident printer for you to watch and probably make comments about. Positive, negative, whatever they are. I like comments. So leave the comments. Do subscribe if you haven't yet, and maybe become a member. If not, maybe a thanks here and there. Check out the video. All right, today we are actually going to be working on some linear rails. So our Voron printer, if you don't know how, or if you didn't see my video on lubricating these, I went ahead and did one. I didn't do a mod, did the rest of them off camera because I don't think people like watching paint dry. Maybe you're into that type of thing, but not so much for me. So there are three different sizes here. We have our MGM9, MGM12, and the 9s are in two different lengths. So be aware of that. So we have these longer ones right here. 1, 2, 3. No, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, yes. And 3 of the shorter ones. So be advised of that. So first things first is we're going to talk a little bit about what is in a linear rail, just so you don't take them apart, because if you do, you might wind up with more than you bargained for. So linear rail is made up of the rail itself and a carriage. They are precision machined, and when I say precision, I mean that loosely, because depending on where you're getting them from or where they're coming from, they will be more or less precision machined. They are basically a rail which is cut out of steel. It has these grooves on the side where the ball bearings will rest during use. And then they have a carriage which retains the ball bearings, both with the carriage itself as well as with usually a little bit of a retaining wire in there. Inside of that carriage are dozens of little tiny ball bearings. They are about a millimeter or so, maybe 1.5 millimeters each, so you do not want to let them out. If you do let them out, they will run around, wreak havoc, and you will not get them back in. And I say that because I speak from experience. If you drop 1 or 2 and you do it just a little bit and you got them retained, you can kind of get them back in, but it's not a fun job to do. Matter of fact, I'd like to see how they actually put them together in a factory, because this has got to be a machine that does it, because doing it by hand is crazy. All right, so that being said, that's what's inside of a rail, and we're going to be putting this rail right here. I'm not going to do all of them on camera, simply because if I do that, again, it's repetitive. You don't need to see the repetitive stuff. So we're going to put one on one side, and then I'm going to have them both on there, and then we're going to do the other ones as well the same way, because you don't need to say the same thing all the way through. If you like that type of thing, let me know in the comments, because you know they're there for. When we put these on, the suggestion in the manual, if we look over the manuals, to put them in every other hole. I think that's a very good suggestion. It is a little bit overkill to put it in every single hole, but if you're into that type of thing, go ahead and go nuts, assuming you have enough hardware to do that. Not going every other hole, you know, some people may even argue that you could go every third hole or something like that. It's up to you. It's your printer. You do what you want to do. If you just want to put 2 screws in it or 3, do it. Don't complain when it doesn't work properly about 3 weeks down the road, when things just start moving a little bit. So preparation mounting, we've already preparated our rails. We will make note, because I believe they are here, that you want to be careful that you do not lose your carriage off of your rail. I like to keep the stoppers, these little blue things that came with these particular linear rails, on my linear rail. They can sit just perfectly on there. The only thing I can't do is put screws in them. So what I'll wind up doing, because I definitely want to get screws in the very end ones, the end holes here, is I will move them over by 1 on each side, and that will protect me. Give me a little of insurance right there. So now we can do that. It also gives us our start, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can go that route. So first things first is, since we're going to go every other hole, I've already preloaded these a little bit with about half. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about thread locker real quick, and why this is very important for this particular part to have the thread locker as opposed to some of the other parts. I guess in a nutshell, what it comes down to is this is metal on metal with metal. So there is very little give when it comes to this. And you could argue that the aluminum has more give than the steel, and the stainless has more give than the steel, and the stainless has more, more strength than the aluminum. But again, they're all going to basically be working against each other when things get warm inside that printer too, or cool off. So the more the better when you can secure these. So let's start off by looking at these roll nuts real quick. And when we do that, if you're not familiar with a roll nut, it is round on the bottom, like that. That's showing up pretty well on camera. And it has a little ball bearing right here. And that ball bearing is what basically holds it in place when it's in there. So you can actually insert a roll nut on a vertical extrusion. If I do, actually I'll do one right here real quick. You can actually install one and it stays where you put it, which is really nice. Roll nuts are great. If you don't have roll nuts, you might have hammers or something called a T-nut or a hammer nut. Those are similar, but they're a little bit more difficult. Those you probably, no, you can't when you're doing a rail, but sometimes you want to put a screw in those and then put them in. And those rely on the fact that they'll go into the rail because they're the width of the rail, but they will caulk a little bit, maybe 15 degrees or so, 20, when you put the screw and you tension them, and that's what holds it against the extrusion. So I prefer these, but if you don't have them, use the other ones, but you can get these cheap and they'll help you out quite a bit. All right, that being said, I'm gonna need a few more of these. When you're putting these in, you will notice that the holes on these are offset. And the call out in the manual, and I don't think it's overly important in this particular step, but the call out in the manual is to put them so the holes are facing towards the side that they're on. So basically on this side, all the holes, and I'll take this away for now, all the holes are going to be facing in this direction, whereas on the other side, all the holes are going to be facing in that direction. So I'm going to be putting one more in here. And if you're having difficulty getting these in, one trick I have for you is you can just put a small driver in those and you can roll them, which hence gives you the name roll nut. So put them in like that, grab it, give it a rock like that. And yeah, so I'm going to put this on here now. And the reason I'm doing this is we're going to pre-align where these are going to go. So on this end one, definitely important that we have the hole there because it's right on the end of that roll nut. These other ones not so much, but we're just going to follow suit because there's no reason not to in this case. So let's just kind of sort of get it lined up to where they need to go eventually. And that one there, and that one here, and this guy's gonna be down there. We'll put him right here, and this guy right here. And did I want to put an extra one? No, yes, okay. So in this particular case, because it's an odd number, we're going to wind up with an extra one. So I'm gonna put 2 in the center. I'm gonna come back here, do that, do that, do that. And let's finish aligning these real quick. Just make sure we get them close. If you get them close, you should be all set. And there, and then finally there, and that one on the end. Okay, so now that I have those where I want them, I got them right where I want them. I'm going to talk a little bit about screws and Loctite or thread locker, TM, whatever. I use 2 different types of thread locker. And the types I use are this chapstick version, which I really dig on this particular type of setup. It allows you to basically simply just put your threads right on there and grab your thread locker and then basically insert it. Now, one thing I will make note of is here we are dealing only with metal. We have no plastic around, so I'm not worried about a little bit of extra thread locker on these. And possibly getting on other metal parts. Now, if there was a lot of plastic around, that might be something of concern because plastic can be affected by thread locker. Now, different plastic acts differently to different thread lockers, but overall, there's an effect on the plastic. I'm not overly concerned about it for the most part, but some people are. So I'm going to play the even street here and say, be careful thread locker when you deal with plastic. Here on metal, go ahead and go nuts. So that's that version of it. The other version is, and I know it's a little far away, is the liquid thread locker. And if you're gonna do liquid thread locker, you have 2 options. Your option 1 is to basically put thread locker on your screws, and I would do them in bulk like this. You don't need a lot, you just need a dab, and it doesn't have to go around the whole screw because as you thread that screw in, it's going to get wrapped around it anyways. But the option 1 is to put it directly on the screw like that. Option 2 for you is going to be putting it directly in the hole like that, just a little drop. It's got enough thickness to it where it won't, wrong cover, where it won't just drop right through, but it will sit there for you, available for when you need it. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue putting these in. And as I put these in, I am barely tightening them. I am just tightening them to the point where I know for a fact they're getting into the roll nut below. So I'm just assuring myself of that and basically getting it low enough so that I can put my carriage over it, move it back and forth if I need to. Since we pre-lined these, we should be pretty good. Is that one catching? That one's not catching. Why isn't that one catching? Oh, I know why. This is where we jumped it. So this is where we jumped one. So I'm gonna move this one over a little bit. We had an odd number, so we changed. We did 2 in the center here. And I ran out of pre-thread lockered screws, and I'm gonna go with my other thread locker. I think it's a little bit neater and quicker for me. I'm just gonna get these loaded up. This is one of the few places that if you wanted to use a electric driver of sorts, that you're pretty safe to do so. But we're not tying them up just yet because we gotta get them in the right places. So let's go ahead and continue to get these where they need to be. Yep. And then we're gonna go over to the manual here. It's all about the mounting and the oiling and all the stuff that we already did yet. And then on the y-axis, which is where we're at right now, we've positioned the printer in similar orientation as to what they have over here on the right. And again, I've mentioned it in other videos, but I'll say it again. If you are able to maintain the same orientation that they show in the photographs, it will make things a lot simpler. It's one less thing for you to kind of figure out as you go. All right, so we have that. We have our T-nuts. We have them in place. We have our MGN9 in place. We've gone ahead and skipped every one. We do have them on the ends. And they're telling you to mind the carriage, which is a very good tip. We talked about that too, right? And then they have us doing with the M3x8s, which is the screw size that we did use here. And they are talking now about these. These are alignment tools. Now I have 3. You are told to print 2, but I print 3. I put 1 on each end and 1 in the center. And I think that's a little more secure. On top of that, if you break one, you don't have to wait and go print another one. So things like this, if there are call outs to print little tools and they're all in the tool folder for your Voron printer, or if you're doing print and forward, ask for a couple spares because there's no reason not to. You might lose one, you might break one. And you know, it takes literally, with a decent printer, if you add another one of these to your build plate, it's going to take an extra couple minutes. It's not big, and the material used is minimal. So we're going to make sure that we're center here. It's pretty close to being the same on both ends, but we're gonna make sure we are. And then we're going to make sure that these are in place. And what I like to do is work from the center outwards. So I'm going to start with my 2 center screws right here. I'm going to hold this in place, and I'm going to screw this in. Now, one thing I will tell you is you want to work relatively quickly when you have thread lock on things. But what I like to do is I like to move this over to the area that I'm working in. And I'm going back and forth as I go. And I got the 2 on the ends as well. It's my method. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's the way I like to do it. And then finally, for these last couple, This one right here. Thread locker's already starting to grip a little bit. And then the ones the ends, I don't really need to move anything because these are already where they need to be. Once I get these on, I am going to move over to something that I can put a little bit more torque on these. I do like to get a decent amount of torque on these, so the T-bar is a great tool for that. One of the things I can add in the description of the video, if I think of it, is a link to these on my Amazon affiliates page. If you do buy something off of that, it does help the channel out. So kudos to you if you do that, if you need these. These are also really good. These are both made by the Waiha company, which is, they're really good. All right, so that's what we have. We can take these off now. I'm gonna leave these on for now. We don't wanna leave them on forever. We could take them off now too, because now we're in between our plastic parts, but I feel more comfortable when they're there. Now, if they're falling out, because sometimes these will, that's fine too. You can take them out. But like I said, I usually just leave them in there until the end. It's kind of a reminder for me to make sure that everything is still tightened up. Part of my final process of going through the printer is to go through, remove those types of things, tighten everything up, and then be good to go. All right, so we have that one done. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, but I'm not going to put you through the labor of watching that. I'm gonna do it off camera, and I will be right back. All right, so there we go. Second one's on there, manual, done, TINA operation, we talked about it. M3x8, Y, X, X, our Ys are done. All right, we're good. All right, so on to Z-axis stuff. So they're talking about the left, right, they're talking about the parts here that we're going to basically be running our chain on and basically are going to be mounting our motors on. So the first thing we got here is our Z-axis, our on a printer. Now on this page, yeah, they did. I thought for a second that I didn't, but we're going to wind up flipping this thing back over at this point, I believe. Yeah. So I'm going to cover up my thread lockers, get rid of this, pull these guys out for now, and we're going to orient this in a way that matches the drawing, because we should. And it's very important that we stay aligned with the Voron. Stay aligned with the Voron. All joking aside, it's easier to build if you do kind of stay focused on what you're doing and doing it the way that they suggest. Simple as that. Follow the instructions. All right. There we go. All right, so we're working back here right now, and before we jump too far into that, I want to talk a little bit about the parts we're using. So I am doing, like some other things, a few minor mods. I'm doing what's called inverted electronics on my Voron, which requires a few pieces. I'm going to show you the difference in the pieces real quick. And basically what's happening here, man, this squeaky chair, is the parts that are down here on the frame are slightly modified. They're slightly smaller. What they've done is they've removed the lips that basically work on the plastic. So the larger ones are the Voron bomb, or you know, the parts, the STLs that come with it. These ones are the modified ones, and each of them is just slightly smaller. It's pretty much the only difference between the two is that, but this will allow us to basically lift up the cover from the inside to get the electronics, and have the electronics sitting inside here nice and pretty, versus having to flip the printer over to get the electronics. So very nice mod. Probably in the top 3, maybe not the top, maybe the top thread locker. Maybe the top #1 mod that people do is to do that with the electronics so you can get to them easier. So this being what it is, with the bed actually moving up and down, unlike 2.4, you can move your bed all the way up top, have perfect access to everything. So definitely something to think about. So that being said, let me open up my browser and show you what we're looking at here. So this right here is in the GitHub. Basically, I will try to put a link again in the description for this video, or the extra information at the bottom. And it's it is what it is. It's the inverted electronics, Trident inverted electronics. Right here you can see basically what a video is. It's just a loop here, so he's putting it back in, but it works the same way for taking it out. It just goes in, pops down, there you go. Everything is accessible, nice and neat. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And really only requires a couple additional parts. So how can you argue with that? So that being said, we're going to still follow the Voron instructions because these parts are only slightly modified. We don't have to do anything different. And that's going to start off with us basically putting some T-nuts on the back here. Let's see if yep. So this is the back brace going up on our Z-axis. This is the back of the printer. And we're going to put some M5 T-nuts in here. And I got to grab those. We need 4 of them in. And let's see, yep, all inclusive, we need 4. So I'm going to put these facing away. The threads are facing away from the center brace. All of them. And there are 2 going on the top portion and 2 going on the portion facing me, based on the orientation that I have, which is with the front of the printer facing me as well. And then again with the alignment here, I'm just going to grab my tools and I am going to roughly align these where they need to be, which is roughly going to be there. M5 is going to be a little bit more place. As long as we're slightly close, we can get in there and move them around. So we're going to need some thread locker on these screws. What are we using this time around for screws? M5 T-nuts and M5 by 10 button head screws. So that would be, are these the 10s or these? These look like 8s, but they might be 10s. Yeah, these are 10s. So we're going to need 4 of these guys. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this time around, because they are larger, I'm not going to try to put thread locker. Junk. I'm not going to try to put thread locker in the actual roll nut. I'm going to put it on the threads. I will say this is the usual. And I'm just going to get the first one kind of where it needs to be. Try not to get too much on the actual plastic part. There we go. And we're going to put this in, and we're going to have the wrong tools because we need larger tools. So this should be about where we want it. I think. Close? Maybe? How far off are we? We are a little bit off. We want to be there. There we go. Now some people put the thread locker on, they'll actually reach in there and do a toothpick or something like that. If you want to go like that, go crazy, it's your printer. To me, I don't like to go crazy with things. There's a certain amount that you can go to, and then at some point it starts to get a little extreme. In these plastic to metal parts, again, if you wanted to, if this wasn't part of the drive, I would possibly consider doing it without thread locker, but because it is a part that's going to get a lot of movement, it's going to be vibrations and whatnot, more so than some other areas of the printer, I'm choosing to use thread locker on these parts. So, do I keep on grabbing the wrong one? Yep. Yeah, it seems like I'm a little bit off on this one too. We'll see if this other side's where it needs to be. Yep. Or no. It's a no. All right, let's pull that out if we can. There we go. And pardon the tipping of the printer. but I need to be able to see what I'm doing here for a second. It looks like they were too far in. And the other one's actually so far in that I am going to have to slide this out for a second. So I guess another big thing to note is frustration. Don't get frustrated when you're building the printer. As long as you take your time and you make sure that every step you do is as precise as you can make it, you're going to be okay. The moment you say the heck with it and just continue to move on, you're going to be building on a printer or on a foundation for a printer that isn't sound. So sometimes, and I'm not saying this because how long it takes me to put videos out, I'm saying it's because in general, sometimes it makes sense to just put things away, whether that be for the night, for the week, whatever. Take your time, do what you got to do. You're not in a rush. You shouldn't be in a rush. It's your printer. You're not making it for anybody but yourself. So take your time. I'm being careful. I'm giving these a little tweak. But you want to be careful whenever you're dealing with plastic parts. If you hear it crack, I suggest taking the part off and inspecting it at the very least. Worst case scenario, you need to reprint the part. Best case scenario is it was just something slipping. So, and I guess part of that worst case scenario is you broke the part, you continue to put the printer together like we were talking about before, and then you wind up with a part that, or a print that's not coming out right, and you can't figure out why. And 3 weeks ago or 3 days ago, whatever the amount of time is, you did that and now you forgot about it, so you have no idea. All right, so that's our Z axis. And now we're doing the Z linear rails, and they are, so the photo on this page, if there is any photo in this whole guide that I think is both funny and specific and well needed, is that photo right there. And it's part of the reason why I always say, you know, leave on the stoppers as long as you can on your rails. You know, there's no reason to take them off right away. You can leave them on there unless they fall out, but I like to leave them in as long as possible. So if you have those in here, they're not going to fall off. And if you've really packed the grease in these shouldn't be sliding around anyways. We talked about that in the video I did where I cleaned up a rail on video and lubricated it. You want drag on your rails, in case you didn't watch that video. If you don't have drag on your rails, that means your rails are going to have some rocking in them. They're not going to be specific. There is supposed to be stress between the carriage and the rail. It is supposed to move nice and smoothly on the rail. It's not supposed to be bumpy or grindy or anything like that, but it's supposed to be tight to the rail. That's what holds it together. That's what gives you the precision. The speed will come with the motors moving it, and as time goes on, they will wear a little bit, and they'll wear into each other. And just, yeah, so trust me when I say they're supposed to be a little bit sticky. Sticky is a good word. So if they're sticky and you leave those on there, you don't have to follow this page. Other than that, to me, you could put a person here and make that a ladder and just be like any other OSHA book, right? So let's see here, T3, MGN 9s, M3 8s, same thing as we did with the Y. So probably gonna fast forward through this on the video that you're watching, but we'll see. I'll do that in editing. So the first one we're gonna do is the one here on the back, and we're doing every other one again. So this guy's gonna go here, and we're actually going to be putting the rail so it is touching. All right, got that Z rail on, the first one on there. And just for a note to any and all, the call out on spacing for the bottom down here is 1 to 2 millimeters. Now, if you've gone ahead and you printed off the tool that you use for aligning your AB motors, this also has a section right here, this thinner section. I went ahead and measured that. That was about 1.2, maybe 1.3 millimeters. So right in the middle what you need. So I went ahead and I used that actually as my spacer for that. So no need to get out any additional tools for that. You can go ahead and use the tools that you already have. So pretty cool there. All right, so back to the manual we go. Yeah, okay, so we have these little stoppers. I guess that's the best thing to call them, is a little stopper. And what that little stopper is for is the back side here for that particular for this particular guy right here, this guy right here. So what that looks like is a little piece. You could almost miss it. You're gonna have a couple of these. You're gonna actually have 3. But the call out on these is to actually use the hammerhead nuts, which are which are very droppable, which are these guys right here. And they are called hammerheads because, well, they look a little bit like a hammerhead. So the call out on this is to basically go ahead and put your screw through your piece. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little dab of thread locker on this. And this is only to satisfy those who believe thread locker should go on everything. So, because this isn't really structural, but the hammer nut, or the hammer head nut, whatever you want to call it, is going to go, so the rough part, the part that actually has the indents on it, the part's going to suck this way when it gets in there, is facing towards the plastic part. So it's going to actually get assembled in this way. And the reason why you're putting this on advance is because you can basically put this in to use like that, and then the process of you pushing this in and then giving it some turns should cause that hammerhead to bind itself with the extrusion, which it did. So I'm going to go and take this one out and let's do a quick demo. Oh yeah, that is going to stop us from going where we need to go. And down here, you know what? We're full up, 100% safe there. But like I mentioned before, I like to keep these in as a little reminder that we still haven't gone around and done a final tightening of all the screws on those. So at this point, back in the manual, we just did this part. Is the note here, the memo about the 1 to 2 millimeters fine. And when they say it's fine, it means it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more. It's not a very specific measurement. M5 T-nuts. So these are going to be for these guys right here. And again, I want everybody to, or if you're watching this video at least, to look at the situational or where your printer is at this point. Because I'm going to go ahead and actually move mine to match up with the drawing. And that makes it easier for me to know that I'm working on this corner right here. So when I look at this drawing right here and I put that printer in front of me just the same way, it makes it easy for me to know basically what I'm looking for. So since I know that, and I kind of have my angle where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're working right here, and what we're doing is we're putting on one of these guys right here. And again, we're using the modified version. The original version of these would look a little bit bigger. They like that. but the ones we're using today are smaller, and I can show you how much smaller if we put this in place and then put that in place. So it's, you know, probably, oh, I'd say 8 or so millimeters, you know, almost a centimeter, not quite, difference in size. And the difference is the bottom section there with the additional on the side there. So yeah, we give her that. So what we're gonna do is we need some M5 T-nuts. We need 4 of them in total. And where are my M5s? They're right here. And we're gonna follow what they do. In this one, they want us to basically face them in opposite directions. So basically one forward, one backwards, one forward, one backwards. So they're facing away from each other. So holes facing out. So hole facing that way on this one, and then the hole facing this way on this one. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Boom, boom, okay. And then we're gonna line them up. Try to line them up at least. And I'm wondering if did they make it so, I like it when things are designed in such a way that makes sense. This is a little bit off. So this one needs to get moved just a little bit. And that might be because this is a reworked piece. And I'm just lining these up by eye. That's about all I can do. And you don't need to be dead on, you just have to be close. This time around we're going through plastic, and again, not a huge deal, but I'm going to go ahead and put a little tiny dab of thread locker on these as well. And basically we're just saying, you know, if you want to use thread locker, go ahead. You don't need to use it everywhere. On these plastic parts, I think it's less needed. We're going to need M5 by 10s, which are these guys right here. I'm going to need 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oop. And we're going to need to get the right driver. And we don't need to go nuts with these. No pun intended there. And I'm going to go ahead and do both on these because these are just relatively quick. It's not like the 8 or 10 roll nuts and screws I have to put in for the linear rails. Keep on forgetting that I can always just edit these things and fast forward through certain parts of it if it gets a little boring, but try not to do it too much. But also try not to waste your time, because I think it's one of the biggest reasons why people watch my videos. And actually, I'm interested, why do you watch my videos? What is the comparison? What is different? I've been told that my camera angles are good, which I kind of do work on that. But also told that unlike a live stream, I'm not wasting your time taking those comments and concerns and all those other things that happen during live streams. So they're showing us doing that on the Z, but they only show us doing it on 1, and I don't know why. It seems like we can do both. Just scrolling through the manual. They don't have us doing both. I'm gonna go ahead and do both of these because this is the first Trident I've built, but I don't see any reason why we can't do both. And I'm a firm believer of if you do something with repetition, it's going to save you time in the long run. It's a muscle memory. I mean, we're not doing it enough to actually make real muscle memory, but we're doing it enough so that you know, we just did it. We had those tools in our hands. We're not moving from an M5 driver to a M3. We're not moving from one extreme to another, I guess, or whatever you want to say. It's how I feel, dang it. So, just because I did it before, a little there, a little there. And again, I wouldn't normally even care. And I probably, if I did have more of a care, I wouldn't necessarily use a liquid Loctite for and even the KV 3D good stuff on an M5 hole, just because it's a little big for the viscosity of the thread locker. It's mostly just going to fall right through. But let's get this one lined up here. Close enough. Close enough. Close enough. Almost. Close enough. Almost close enough. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and put these on, or through, I should say. It's kind of a thing I'm thinking about as I put these through. There's a little bit of bridging or some stringing that's happening on some of the bridging on some of these holes here, just the way it was sliced and printed. And I do print my Voron parts a little hot, by the way. I just feel the layer adhesion's a little bit better that way. Anyways, that bridging, I'm thinking to myself, as that breaks off and goes down into those threads, it's actually almost like a little bit of a thread locker as well. So, no harm there. All right, that's moderately tight. So now, let's take a look at the Z, and we're doing the same thing. It's rinse and repeat at this point. So we're doing our Z's, and are they calling out? Are they showing us exactly where and how? Kinda, sorta. So we can use this as a reference point picture. This one right here, where we're underneath underneath the parts that we have here. I'm going to go ahead and keep on flipping this around. Because basically what's going to come down to now is mounting those additional parts that we need to get mounted in there. So let's get those additional Z's in. And now they're putting that one in. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. So what we really want to do here is one more turn. And I've learned my lesson. I tried so hard to do it in an angle that was more in line with something to videotape, but I'm gonna do it flat. I suggest you do it flat. That's a strong suggestion. Doing it vertical, it's not sensible. There's no reason to do it vertical. If you want to do it vertical, by all means, have at it, but there's no real reason to do that. That's not cool. Oh, I see where it is. So I have one in the completely wrong spot right here. And I can see it when I move this, that it's right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my screwdriver in. I'm going to let this linear rail push it up for me. And then when I pull the rail down, I can line it up with the correct spot. Save me from taking it all apart. So I'll put that back there. Put this back in here. Give it a good little push. And start all over. Yay! Right, there's that. And then all right, give those a final tweak. And last but not least, we'll get that last stopper on there, right here. Screw through, hammerhead nut. All right, where does that put us? We already did that. So again, doing stuff chronologically is awesome. Use the manual, follow it to the T as closely as you can. But on some things, if you know you're gonna be doing your repetition, sometimes it makes sense to kind of go a little bit off the beaten path. So we've already done these things. Yeah. All right. Now, let's flip this thing around. Take a look at what we got. We've got our Y rails. We have our Z rails. Linear rails. We have our Z linear rails right here. We don't have our X in yet because our gantry's not in yet. So, but that is coming soon. So, next couple of steps. And this is going to be in the next video. We're going to start building those Z joints as well as the Z drives to actually give ourselves some Z on this printer. So at this point we have a printer frame, we're complete. We have our linear rails, we have a very nice setup. I actually like the way this looks, and I'm really digging the space gray that I chose with the black and the orange. And that orange, if I haven't mentioned it before, if I haven't shown it off before, it's going to be a real decent unveil at the very end here, is basically very reactive to black light or UV. So the whole idea is this is the Ghost Trident, is everything's going to be black on the inside of it with black lights, and it's going to all show black except for the parts that are orange on this and possibly the parts that I'm printing. All right, that is one more video in the Trident series, and we're going to continue on with it. So hopefully next time you join us. This time was real fun. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you haven't yet subscribed, I would appreciate it. If you have a comment, any comment whatsoever, do leave it below. It helps out. YouTube loves that stuff. The interaction's great for my channel. It's great for my videos. And finally, I guess last but not least, if you haven't become a member or if you haven't left a super thanks, that's hard to say, super thanks. I really appreciate it. Helps out with the gear and all that other good stuff. So I'll check you later, and hopefully you'll be there for the next one. See you next time.